a St. Louis furniture maker, and the history of the St. Louis Symphony at Powell Hall. We have more information about those two exhibitions coming up next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter. Welcome to City Corner. Coming up a little later, we're going to meet a St. Louis furniture maker, Peter Voss, who has an exhibition of his work up currently at Gallery 210 at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. We'll get to that a little bit later, but right now I'd like to welcome my guests. That is Waller McGuire, the Executive Director of the St. Louis Public Library, and Marie-Hélène Bernard. She is the President and CEO of the St. Louis Symphony. Welcome, both of you.
Good morning, Steve.
Well, what do the library and the symphony have in common, Waller?
A lot, actually. We've got a long history together. The symphony performs regularly in, or parts of the symphony performs regularly in Central Library, and right now what we're cooperating on is celebrating their remarkable history for 50 years. I was stunned within the Powell Hall itself.
Right.
So just a part of their work.
You mentioned Central Library, and just to be clear, that's the historic building downtown.
The beautiful library down at 1301 Olive Street, yes.
And you had a fabulous sort of remodel, if that's the right term, for it just a few years ago.
A restoration and reworking, yes. I actually got to pick up the National Award from the Historic Preservation, National Award for Historic Preservation. So, yeah, it's one of St. Louis's great treasures, and Powell Hall is the other. Right,
and the St. Louis Symphony also. Marie-Hélène, you are the President and CEO of the St. Louis Symphony, but it hasn't been that long.
2.5 years.
Yeah. And what's your background, just briefly? How did you end up in St. Louis?
I was a tax attorney years ago and had a background in music, so wanted to move to the U.S. I was in Canada then to pursue a career in orchestra management. So I worked with major orchestras, New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Boston, and then came to St. Louis, which is a community I truly love. And St. Louis has truly one of the finest orchestras in the country.
I think everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah. So what made you decide, or made the organization decide that 50 years was something that you really wanted to recognize? 50 years of Powell Hall.
Well, going back to what Waller was saying, we both live and promote landmark buildings in St. Louis. I mean, both the Central Library and Powell Hall. Powell Hall was built in 1925.
Didn't my dad used to go see movies there in the 40s?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a long history there. So when the Symphony purchased the building in '67 and then renovated it to make it a concert hall in '68, it was a big deal at the time. There was press from around the country traveling to St. Louis, and really considering our hall one with the finest acoustics in the country, which is something very difficult to achieve, to move a movie theater into a concert hall and create an acoustical hall that was absolutely pristine.
See, without going into too much detail, see, I almost think that might be easy, because wouldn't a movie theater be built with acoustics in mind?
No, this is very, very different.
Really?
However, so to your question about why celebrating 50 years, it's that it coincides with a time in our history here in St. Louis and with the St. Louis Symphony where we wanted to honor and truly mark this important celebration, and also honoring the leaders who back in 1967-68 made it possible. Given our long partnership, we combine efforts and talent to really present this really magnificent exhibition.
Waller, what do you think of the exhibition, and how are you using the space in the library to show that off?
It's a stunning thing. One of the things we've been able to do since we renovated was present a series of really gorgeous exhibits about the richness of St. Louis culture. We've worked with the Campbell House Museum and did a really stunning exhibit of that amazing place just 2 blocks from Central Library. We've worked with the blues. We had a really wonderful exhibit of Where the Wild Things Are, Maurice Sendak. So it's a way that we can use one of the great buildings of the United States to talk about and show people St. Louis culture. It's often funny. We meet people who know a lot about St. Louis from out of town, It's not unusual to find St. Louisans who really don't know a great deal about it. The last big exhibit we did, we had visitors from over 40 states and 7 different countries.
What was your last one?
That was the World War I exhibit,
right.
My Fellow Soldiers, and then we did the Shakespeare exhibit as well. So it's amazing a number of people from all over the country and the world come to St. Louis to enjoy and take part in what we have to offer. We're trying to make sure that St. Louis knows about it as well.
Right. We'll try to help you today if we can. We've got some images to look at that are taken at Central Library of some of the things in this current exhibition. And how did you decide what you were going to show?
Well, our team worked together. So
and maybe also talk about what we're looking at.
Sure, absolutely. So what you see now is kind of a timeline that puts Powell Hall in the context of being a movie theater and a destination for St. Louisans until from 25 to 66. Actually, the last movie that was shown was Singing in the Rain and the St. Louis Symphony. Sorry, not the Sound of Music, which the Symphony showed in January in connection with the 50th anniversary. Right. So really, we walked the participants through what it took to transform a movie theater into a concert hall, and in each cases, we have pulled really very special items from the collection that we either had or that Waller's team had at the library, or that patrons or former board members or musicians brought to us. So not only does it give you a really good historical sense of the St. Louis Symphony as an orchestra, its evolution, how this hall really truly is a reflection of our community, but really interesting objects, the Grammy that you see here, that the Grammy that the orchestra won in 2014 for John Adams' recording of City Noir.
It's the only Grammy I've ever touched.
Yeah.
They let you touch it?
Yeah, yes, I got to. Yeah.
And you see artworks as well. There's some posters that we have produced over the years about concerts, and some of these are, those that are shown are quite remarkable artworks. So I think that, you know, you see programs.
What's the bear there?
The bear is a bear. Is it a Build-A-Bear? I don't remember what it was.
That's a conductor Build-A-Bear, yes.
So probably Maxine Clark and her team back in the days produced. So there's some various items, and the beauty of this exhibition is that our team, who are not museum curators, truly have pulled items to just give a good sense of the history, of the importance of the building, of our partnership, but also pulled some interesting archival scores, batons, bows, and also explaining a little bit of how the music comes together. So it's very accessible, and I saw the exhibition about 3 times, and every time I'm amazed to see the library full of people, and people are there to study, to learn, to use, you know, resources that the library offers. And the beauty of this is the Central Library and the St. Louis Symphony offering a community service. And as Waller said, reminding our community of the importance of our own history.
Waller, what did your staff do as far as putting this exhibition together? Were you guys partly responsible for the design layout, how it looks visually, or who did that?
Oh, yes. I'm very lucky in having a wonderful design team. It's what makes it possible. These are hard and expensive to put together. Maria Lynn and I met at the home of a friend, mutual friend, and she was talking about the 50th anniversary, and we thought it was something really we should do. We've got the space, we've got the opportunity. Powell Hall is huge, but it's so crowded. When you go to a performance, you can't see an exhibit there.
Yeah, I guess you really don't have a room there you could do this in, do you?
No, not of the size that the library has. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a space, and it's a mission that we take on regularly. So we're really lucky to have a team that can put them together. And library staff went out and met with Maureen Byrne, who's on Maria Lynn's team, and actually got to dig through the storage areas and look for things that were appropriate. And one of the things we've talked about, Stanley Goodman, one of the great St. Louis figures who helped create Powell Hall, was a major figure in the whole project. The board of the symphony gave him an original score that appears to have been by Mozart's hand. That was in Powell Hall. The symphony staff found it, and it's now in an exhibit case in the Great Hall. That's a pretty astonishing thing.
You mean it was put away and sort of forgotten about?
No, we knew we had it because
it was just put away.
Yes, and as any organization that has a long history like the St. Louis Symphony, several archival items, some live at Powell Hall, some are in the archives of the library, and others are kept at the History Museum.
But now we're talking about, of course, I've gotten to know David Robinson fairly well over the years. I probably interviewed him on the radio about 24 times, it seems like, since he's been here. He is departing, would it be next year at the end of this?
No, at the end of this season. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, wow, what's involved in finding, I think you have...
We have appointed Stéphane Denève, music director, on June. He was appointed on June 7th, 2017.
Tell us just a little bit about him.
So Stéphane Denève is French. He has been a very regular guest at the St. Louis Symphony since 2003. So he's come now 8 times. Orchestra loves him. He's young, 45 years old. He has a very, very established career as a music director and conductor, both here in the U.S. and in Europe. Starting with the 1819 season, he will be music director designate, and his first year officially as music director will be 1920. So someone we have had a long relationship with, so the transition is very smooth, and I think the audience, he was just here 2 weeks ago, is recognizing him and really enjoying his music making.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Waller, I don't remember not if you're from St. Louis originally or not.
I'm not. I'm an import, but I've been here a long time.
Yeah, you've been here a long time. You've just been here a couple of years. Did you know much about St. Louis before you came?
Not really. I knew a lot about the orchestra because I grew up listening to the orchestra and Slatkin. So Leonard Slatkin was such a important figure, and growing up during the 70s and 80s, I got to love some of the repertoire through recordings of the St. Louis Symphony, and it's an orchestra that has always had a great reputation, and one that's very innovative as well. I mean, St. Louis has launched careers of very important artists today, and the career of composers as well.
Why don't you drop a couple of names?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think of music director of Cleveland, Franz Welser made his debut here. There's some pianists and violinists that were given their first chance here, and they're now coming back as regular guests. Same with some of our players who are among the finest in the country. And what St. Louis offers is an amazing cultural landscape, an amazing, beautiful architectural landscape. So that's why we're so proud of the landmark buildings that we live in. And also, I think the quality of life here is quite good. And we have a lot of challenges too. So for us leading important institutions, we're very committed to making a difference for the community and making what we do accessible to all, whether it's music, whether it's learning, books, art. If you look at the collection that our library has, it's truly one of the most remarkable in the country.
Well, we hope that you'll both do that. Just a few seconds if you want to add something more.
One of the things that we try to do is keep the entire catalog of the symphony's recordings and make them available to the public. That's a huge job. The richness of their catalog is astonishing. So it's another wonderful part of what we have.
Well, it just seems so appropriate, this exhibition in particular. You know, it's at the Central Library, which is such a notable building on its own, and you're talking about Powell Hall, so it's sort of like meant to happen, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think an average person would walk away from? How about the person that's not a symphony fan or has never been to the symphony? Would they be interested in any of this?
Sure. The building itself is stunning, and the work it took to turn it into a concert hall is pretty amazing, and that's recorded. So there's a lot about what it takes to actually run a symphony, and it's an art exhibit in and of itself.
And it'll be up for how long?
Until the mid-March, March 17th.
Well, it's the St. Louis Symphony, 50 years of Powell Hall at Central Library right now, running through March the 17th. Be sure and check them out. You can go to the website, give them a call, or just drop by, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And coming up next, it's the furniture of Peter Voss. We'll be back with more City Corner right after this.
Did you know parking over tall, dry grass can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, you think you're probably sober?
Yeah.
But you're thinking about taking the back roads home, just in case. Why would you do that?
Probably okay isn't okay. Call a cab, a car, or a friend.
Good choice.
I'm Steve Potter. Welcome back to City Corner. Simply Different, the furniture of Peter Voss. That's the exhibit now up at Gallery 210 at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Please welcome our guest, furniture maker Peter Voss, to my right, and Terry Suri is here. He's the director of Gallery 210. Nice to meet you both. Terry, I know you a little bit.
Good to be back.
Right. Peter Voss, let me start with you. Simply Different. So how is your furniture different? But I don't think it's simple. So you're going to have to explain that to me.
Well, I like to use simple designs. I prefer not to get too much into carvings or things like that. My designs tend to be contemporary designs, and I like to keep the style fairly simple and allow the wood to be the expressive part.
Well, what makes it different? Is that the high quality of it?
Well, primarily it starts by the fact that I hand select all my hardwoods. Oftentimes I'll just go out and buy hardwoods that I like because I like the particular graining of the wood or the particular size of the piece of wood or something that makes that particular piece kind of unique. Unlike most today's manufactured furniture, there's very little attention paid to what the wood is. You know, it's grab this piece of wood, grab that piece of wood.
If it's really wood on some of them.
If it's really wood. In most cases it isn't. Most furniture today is designed to be disposable, not sustainable.
Right.
So the designs also are reflective of using traditional woodworking techniques such as hand-cut dovetails, mortise and tenon joinery, things that were traditionally used in older furniture. And the older furniture, many people don't realize it, but was traditionally made to be able to be repaired. It was an expensive thing for somebody to purchase, and you wanted to keep it for years, and many people have antiques that were passed down from family to family, and because they are quality pieces, they can be repaired, and like I say today, most furniture is not designed that way. I do design my furniture so that it can be repaired or components can be replaced. I even use hide glue still. Hide glue is the traditional glue that you would see the old woodworkers use, made from the hooves of animals. You know, they talk about the horse going to the glue factory. Well, that glue was kind of unique and it's very strong and it's available in different strengths. But if you heat it and get it with moisture, you can loosen it up so that you can actually take something apart.
Well, believe me, I don't buy really expensive furniture myself, but one of the clues I was always taught was like if drawers are if you see nails in the drawers, that does not mean high quality. Am I right?
Well, it depends on where the nails are at. Traditional furniture, the drawer bottoms often would slide in, and then they would use a couple nails on the bottom of the drawer bottom just to attach it to the case. But yeah, traditionally, no, you don't use nails in furniture, but we do if we find an antique piece of furniture from time to time, and I do some antique stuff, restorations, and if you find a square nail, that
would show age, right?
That helps show age. So there's lots of things that you look for. If you look at the Antique Roadshow, they just had an episode where they talked specifically about that kind of thing.
That's where all my knowledge comes from, about furniture, Antiques Roadshow. Terry, let me ask you this. I know I've interviewed you over the years about all kinds of exhibitions at Gallery 210, artists, photographers. Maybe you've done furniture things before. I'd never heard of it. Is this sort of new for you?
Well, not actually. Several years ago, my board and I decided we were going to instigate a program that focuses on contemporary design in St. Louis. So we've done a number of exhibitions that have featured some furniture, architecture, graphic design, and Peter's work just absolutely hit all the right notes for this particular project.
Well, why don't we look at some of it right now? You brought some images from some of the furniture you'll see at Gallery 210 at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Peter Voss designed and built this furniture. What's that, Peter?
That is actually, that cabinet was designed, and part of my designs are, you know, you might have heard traditionally form follows function. Mm-hmm. This was designed as a stereo cabinet. I tell my customers that I don't want to design a piece of furniture for a specific need.
That has a mid-century look to me. Is that intended?
Yes, it was, you know, that's just sort of my style. I do a lot of, have some mid-century notes in there. The things that I like to do is the three panels that you see on the front of that cabinet, the left door, the four drawers in the middle, and the right door, those were actually all one piece of wood. So if you were to stack the four drawers on top of the right door and the left door on top of the drawers, that would have been one piece of wood. So,
and something's telling me that was important to you to do it that way.
Yeah, I like to find large pieces of wood that are kind of unique, and you see, because you got a consistency in color, you can actually, I like my pieces, when you look at the pieces that I create, I like people to study them because there are unique things about them that...
Let's go to the next one.
Yes, this cabinet, that's actually, the image there is much smaller. That is a tall cabinet, about 85 inches high. It's a 36-inch by 36-inch corner cabinet. What made me make that cabinet is the two pieces that you see, the doors and the drawers there, on the left-hand side of the cabinet, that is one piece of wood going from top to bottom. And on the right-hand side of the cabinet, that's a book match piece or another piece out of the same tree cut in sequence. So you have the grain follows from the top of the doors all the way down to the bottom of the cabinet on both sides. So you see at the bottom two doors, you see the dark spots on the knots on the bottom of the doors, both in the same places. That's the kind of things I like to do. Also that cabinet, the piece of walnut, that is white oak. The doors are white oak. The rest of the cabinet is all solid walnut. The right-hand side of that cabinet has the exact same grain pattern as the left-hand side of that cabinet because it's, again, out of the same tree.
Did you design that for an example for a specific purpose? Because I could see someone using it in their bedroom. I could almost see them using it as an entertainment center.
It can be used just about anywhere. It has a drawer storage in there. It has a drop front on there, so it could be used anywhere from a dining room to a nice kitchen to a bedroom.
Terry, what is it about Peter's furniture and style that attracts you to it, or why do you think it's significant?
Well, I think what Peter does for me, I teach the history of modern design, and when I first saw Peter's work, and I came to know about his work through All the Arts Journal. A former student of mine wrote an article about Peter, and then I followed up through Sarah Weinman to see how to get in touch. But when I look at Peter's work, he definitely does address a very kind of restrained mid-century look. But if you look closer, you'll see elements of arts and crafts. You'll see elements of French modern. And who is this French?
Émile Jacques.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a table, wall table there that just hits every accent perfectly. And then even because Peter, you can't really tell from all this, has a wonderful sense of humor, and he incorporates this into many of his pieces. That first cabinet you saw.
You make funny furniture?
I like pieces to be enjoyable. I mean, my wife and I, when we go to art fairs and we buy art ourselves or something like that, you know, if something reaches out to you, and I do like whimsical. I do some things with whimsy. So, you know, I think it should be fun. It doesn't have to be serious all the time.
Let's take a look at a couple more.
So that brings me back to the postmodern and Memphis influences on some pieces as well, too.
Now that, again, is the same cabinet there, but you see a right side has a slide-out shelf. That was for a turntable, again, because they wanted it as a corner cabinet. That cabinet is called Chameleon. You don't see it in any of these pictures, but my cousin, who was an influence on me, Peter Voss, he was a pretty well-known wood turner here in St. Louis, but he was also a cabinet maker by career, you know, from Germany. He grew up and became a cabinet maker, but he made a chameleon, and my cousin wanted to include that. So we've got a little chameleon on that thing, too.
Let's look at the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a flitch table, which is made out of a...
I'd never heard that term.
A flitch is when you take a tree, a log, let's say an 8-foot section of log, and you lay it on a saw, and you cut it lengthwise. And so you have the bark on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side of the tree, you have the shape of the tree there.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's actually what the top of that is. A friend of mine had a cherry tree on his property cut down, and this is influenced more of a 1970s influence. I was building furniture back in the 70s, and I was doing this kind of stuff back in the 70s, but it's still...
I was thinking, I have this 100-year-old black oak tree in my yard. I wonder what you could do with that.
Well, probably.
Wonderful,
probably a lot.
Wonderful things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Peter, you mentioned just now, you mentioned you had a cousin that was a cabinet maker. I think your mom was an artist of some kind too, right?
She was a ceramicist. She specialized in porcelain, and she did a lot of her work at Craft Alliance. She's retired now, but she is very, very talented and inspiring person to me.
Well, ceramics and furniture are two different things, but did that inspire you in some way to go in that direction?
Well, she encouraged me to, you know, if you want to do something, be creative, you know, find something that you can be creative at. And I think that's sort of what drives me in this thing, is to be creative.
That reminds me of something. We talked for a few minutes before the cameras went on, and we were talking about furniture as art or a craft. And some people might say furniture is not an art, but it's a craft. But I don't know, yours seems like art to me, so what's that whole argument about?
I can understand, you know, the people saying that. I guess my thought on it is that if a craftsman will take a picture, a drawing, or a sample of something, and you say, can you make this for me? A craftsman will make that. An artist, you don't have anything. All you have is maybe you go out and buy some wood, and you say, what do I want to make out of this? So you have to come up with your own design and try not to just copy something from somebody else.
So Peter is an artist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we can look at a couple more images before we're out of time here, because...
Yeah, this one, I do some wall shelves. This is actually a wall shelf. This one I did during the disruptions that we had in Ferguson.
Oh, I see the arch. And
you
the
see
black
the arch?
Oh, I'm getting it now, yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's sort of like, this is my only political statement here. You know, St. Louis seems to be walking on a tightrope with race relations between blacks and whites. And so with this particular image at the gallery, I asked people, I have a little note, or Terry provided me with a notebook there, asked people to say why. I call this why. Why are we socially divided? Why do we have that going on so many years?
There's another argument for this is art, because art makes you think like that, not crafts. Art
Absolutely.
does, right?
Absolutely.
So how long will the show be up, and what do people need to know about Gallery 210? We just have about a minute left.
The exhibition will be up through March 17th. Gallery hours are Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 5, and then I can certainly be available through special appointments. And we have a fantastic catalog that I hope people will take with them and share with their friends and family.
Yeah, and I want to bring out a point, too, that you're from, was it South or North Dakota originally?
South Dakota.
But you moved here when you were a little kid, and you make all your furniture here in St. Louis. You have a studio downtown somewhere?
That's correct. My shop is on Gravois Avenue, 2915 Gravois. And, yeah.
Well, Peter Voss, I love your work, and we need to get out to Gallery 210 to see it. Terry, thank you for bringing Mr. Voss along today.
Always a pleasure, Stephen.
I enjoyed it very much. I'm Steve Potter. That's all the time we have for City Corner. Join us next time. Thanks.